The sounds of machines humming filled the big white building where Nari loved to play. She was 8 years old and had bright blue skin that looked like the morning sky on her home planet. Her purple eyes were bigger than human eyes, and they always seemed to sparkle when she was happy. Today she was very happy because her brother, Jinwoo, was playing hide and seek with her while their parents worked late. Nari giggled as she squeezed herself behind a tall metal cabinet in the hallway. The Galactic Memory Institute was full of strange machines and computers that her parents used to help people forget bad memories. She did not understand exactly what her mom and dad did, but she knew it was important work. Young Mi and Daeho were both very smart scientists who helped aliens from many different planets. The building had long white corridors with bright lights on the ceiling. There were rooms full of blinking computers and machines that made soft, whooshing sounds. Nari had explored every corner of this place during the many evenings when her parents worked late. She knew where all the best hiding spots were, and Jinwoo always had trouble finding her. Tonight felt different, though. The machines seemed louder than usual, and there were more flashing lights. Nari could hear her parents talking in worried voices from the big laboratory down the hall. She wanted to go see what was happening, but Jinwoo had told her to stay hidden until he found her. She was a good little sister, so she stayed behind the cabinet and waited. The laboratory where her parents worked had the biggest machine in the whole building. It was called the memory deletion device, and it was supposed to help people forget things that made them sad or scared. Nari had seen it many times, and it looked like a giant silver box with wires and tubes coming out of it. Her father, Daeho, had explained that it used something called quantum energy to find bad memories in people's minds and erase them. What Nari did not know was that tonight the machine was not working correctly. The scientists had been trying to fix it for hours, but something was wrong with the quantum energy systems. The machine kept making strange sounds, and the computers showed error messages that no one could understand. Dr. Hyensik, who was the boss of the laboratory, was very worried. He kept telling everyone to be careful, but no one knew exactly what might happen. Nari heard footsteps coming down the hallway. She pressed herself closer to the cabinet and tried not to giggle. Jinwoo was getting closer, and she could hear him opening doors and looking in other rooms. She loved her big brother very much. He was 12 years old and always took care of her when their parents were busy. He would read her stories and play games with her and make sure she did not get into trouble. Suddenly there was a loud humming sound from the laboratory. The lights in the hallway started flashing faster, and Nari could feel something strange in the air. It felt like the feeling before a thunderstorm, but much stronger. The humming got louder and louder until it hurt her ears. She wanted to run to find her parents, but she was scared to move. Then everything went white. The memory deletion device had exploded with quantum energy. The energy spread through the whole building like invisible lightning. It was supposed to only affect the test subjects in the laboratory, but something had gone very wrong. The quantum waves went through walls and floors and reached every living mind in the building. When the white light faded, Nari found herself sitting on the floor. Her head hurt and she felt dizzy. She could still hear the machine humming in the laboratory, but it sounded different now. The lights had stopped flashing and everything seemed quiet. Too quiet. Nari got up and walked toward the laboratory to find her parents. Her legs felt wobbly and she had to hold on to the wall. When she reached the laboratory door, she could see her mother and father inside with Dr. Hyonsek and other scientists. They were all looking at computers and talking in serious voices. She ran into the room crying. The strange light had scared her, and she wanted her mommy to hold her and tell her everything was okay. But when she reached Youngmi and grabbed onto her white lab coat, something terrible happened. Her mother looked down at her with confused eyes. Youngmi saw the little blue girl holding onto her coat, but she did not recognize her. She gently pushed Nari away and said to Dr. Hyonsik that there must be some mistake. She asked who this child was and why she was in the laboratory. Nari felt like her heart was breaking. She looked up at her mother and said, "Mommy, it's me, it's Nari, your daughter." But Youngmi just shook her head and said she did not have a daughter. She only had one child, and that was her son Jinwoo, who was probably at home doing his homework. the little girl ran to her father Deho, who was standing by the big machine. She pulled on his lab coat and begged him to remember her. She told him about the bedtime stories he read to her and the way he would carry her on his shoulders. But Deho looked at her the same way young Mi had. He saw a strange alien child, but he did not see his daughter. Dr. Hyansee came over and knelt down next to Nari. He spoke to her in a kind voice and asked her where her parents were. He said she should not be in the laboratory because it was dangerous. But when Nari pointed to young Mi and Deho and said, "Those are my parents," he just looked confused. The worst part came when Jinwoo arrived. Nari heard her brother's voice calling from the hallway, and she ran to him with tears streaming down her face. Jinwoo was looking for their parents because he had heard strange sounds from the building. But when he saw Nari running toward him, he stepped back. Jinwoo looked right at his little sister, but he did not see her. In his mind, he was an only child who had never had a sister. When Nari tried to hug him, he gently moved her away and asked the scientists why there was a lost child in the building. He suggested they should call security to help find her family. Nari realized then that something horrible had happened. The machine had not just erased bad memories from test subjects. It had erased her from the memories of everyone who loved her. Her parents could see her standing right in front of them, but in their minds she had never existed. Her brother looked at her like she was a stranger. The quantum energy had created a terrible mistake. It had found every memory of Nari in every mind in the building and deleted them all. Her first steps, her first words, her birthdays, her hugs and kisses all gone. She was still real and still alive, but she had been erased from the world of everyone who mattered to her. As the scientists tried to figure out what to do with the mysterious alien child, Nari sat in the corner of the laboratory and cried. She could remember everything about her family, but they could not remember anything about her. The machine had stolen her existence and left her completely alone. 6 months had passed since Nari arrived on the industrial planet, and she had learned to live with the constant noise of machines and the smell of oil in the air. She spent most of her time walking around the mining colony, exploring the different workshops and factories. The other children at the group home had their own friends and activities, but Nari still felt like an outsider. Looking in, one day while wandering through the industrial district, she discovered a small garage tucked between two larger factories. The sign outside said Bioram's Repair Shop in faded letters. Through the open door she could see a man working on a complicated machine that had wires and circuits spread across a workbench. The machine looked similar to the quantum computers she remembered from her parents' laboratory. The man was human with dark hair and kind eyes. His clothes were stained with grease and his hands moved with practiced skill as he worked on the delicate electronics. He looked up when Nari appeared in the doorway and smiled at her. Most adults on this planet barely noticed the orphan children. But this man seemed genuinely curious about her. Oram was 42 years old and had been living on Kepler 442b for 15 years. He had come here from Earth after something terrible happened to his family, but he never talked about it with anyone. He fixed quantum computers and communication devices for the mining companies. His work was precise and careful because these machines were very expensive and complicated. When Nari first visited his shop, Biorem noticed that she was different from the other children. She would stand quietly and watch him work without getting in the way. Her purple eyes seemed to understand things that most people could not see. She asked intelligent questions about the quantum circuits and seemed to know more about advanced technology than a child should know. After a few visits, Bioram started talking to Nari while he worked. He explained what each part of the machines did and how quantum energy could be used to store and transfer information. Nari listened carefully, and sometimes she would make comments that showed she understood very well. Bioram was impressed by how smart she was. One afternoon, when Nari seemed especially sad, Bioram asked her what was wrong. She had been coming to his shop for 2 weeks, and he could tell she was carrying some kind of deep sadness. Most of the orphan children were sad about losing their families, but Nari's sadness seemed different. It was like she was mourning something that other people could not see. Nari looked at Bioram for a long time before she started talking. She told him about the Night at the research building when the memory machine exploded. She described how her parents and brother had forgotten her completely. She explained that she had been erased from everyone's memories, but she could still remember everything about her family. Boram listened to her story without interrupting or telling her she was imagining things. When she finished talking, he was quiet for several minutes. Then he asked her specific questions about the memory deletion device and how it worked. Nari described the quantum energy and the computer systems as best as she could remember. Most adults would have thought Nari was making up stories or having dreams about a family she wished she had, but Boram was different. He understood quantum technology, and he knew that consciousness and memory were forms of quantum information. He had heard about experiments with memory deletion devices, and he knew they were dangerous and unpredictable. Or told Nari that he believed her story. He explained that quantum machines sometimes created paradoxes that could trap people between existing and not existing. He said it was possible that her consciousness had been protected somehow during the deletion process while everyone else forgot about her. This was the first time in months that someone had taken her seriously. The mechanic's workshop became Nari's favorite place to spend time. Sunya did not mind because Beoram was a responsible adult who kept an eye on her. The other children at the group home thought it was strange that she preferred hanging around a garage instead of playing games, but they left her alone. Beoram treated her like a real person with legitimate feelings instead of just another orphan. Ram also shared his own story with Nari. He had once been a quantum engineer working for a big technology company on Earth. He had a wife named Mi Young and a daughter named Yunji who was about Nari's age. But there had been an accident in his laboratory that killed both of them. The accident was his fault because he had made a mistake with the quantum calculations. After losing his family, Beoram could not continue his work on Earth. Everything reminded him of Mi Young and Yunji. He came to Kepler 442b to escape the memories and start over as a simple mechanic. But running away from the past had not made the pain go away. He still missed his family every day and felt guilty about the accident that took them from him. Helping Nari gave Beoram a new purpose. He saw in her the same kind of loss he had experienced, but her situation was different. Her family was still alive, but they could not remember her. Beoram thought that if consciousness and memory were quantum information, then maybe there was a way to restore what had been deleted. It would be difficult and dangerous, but it might be possible. Beoram started researching memory deletion technology in his spare time. He used the quantum computers he repaired to access scientific databases and research papers. He learned about the experiments being done with quantum consciousness and memory storage. Most of the information was classified, but Beoram was skilled at finding ways around security systems. What he discovered was both hopeful and frightening. The memory deletion devices did not actually destroy memories completely. They moved the quantum information to a temporary storage area before deletion. If the machine had malfunctioned during Nari's accident, then her memories might still exist in the device's backup systems. But accessing that information would require advanced equipment and technical skills. Beoram explained to Nari that there might be a way to restore her existence in her family's memories. It would not be easy and it would be dangerous. They would need to find a way to contact the quantum backup systems and broadcast her memory signature back to her family. But for the first time since the accident, Nari felt hope that she might see her parents and brother again, the mechanic who had lost his own family was willing to risk everything to help a lost alien child find her way back to the people who loved her. Beoram understood that some things were more important than safety or following rules. Sometimes you had to fight against impossible odds to save someone who needed help. As Nari sat in the workshop watching Beoram work on quantum circuits, she felt like she had found a new kind of family. Not the family she had lost, but someone who cared about her and believed in her. Together, they would try to undo the terrible mistake that had erased her from existence. 3 days passed after the terrible accident, and Nari still wandered the halls of the research building like a ghost. The scientists and workers could see her, but they treated her like She was just some lost child who had wandered in from somewhere else. No one believed her when she said her parents worked there. No one remembered that she had lived in this building for most of her life. Dr. Hyansik tried to be kind to her, but he was also confused. The computers had no record of any child named Nari. There were no files about her birth or her family registration. It was like she had never existed at all. The security cameras showed her playing in the hallways over the past few days, but there were no older recordings of her. Even the photos on her parents' desks had somehow changed to show only Jin-Woo.Young-Me, and Daeho continued their work as if nothing had happened. They talked about their son Jin-Woo and made plans for his school projects. Sometimes Nari would sit nearby and listen to them discuss family dinner plans or weekend activities. It hurt so much to hear them talk about a family that no longer included her. She wanted to scream that she was their daughter, but the words felt useless. The cleaning robot was the only thing that seemed to notice her properly. It would beep at her and try to clean around her when she sat in the hallways. The robot had sensors that could detect her presence, but it did not have memories that could be erased. Sometimes Nari would talk to the robot because it was the only thing that responded to her in a normal way. On the third day, a group of maintenance workers arrived to fix some broken equipment. They saw Nari sitting alone in the lobby and assumed she was an orphan who had been brought to the building for some reason. One of the workers, named Taemin, felt sorry for her and asked if she needed help. When Nari could not explain where her family was, the workers decided to take her to the authorities. The transport ship that took Nari away from her homeworld was crowded with refugees and travelers. She sat by a small window and watched her planet get smaller and smaller until it was just a tiny dot among the stars. The ship captain had processed her as an unaccompanied minor from the outer colonies. Since there were no records of her existence, the authorities had to create a new identity file for her. The file listed her as unknown origin with no family contacts. The bureaucrats who handled her case were busy with hundreds of other refugees, so they did not spend much time asking questions. They simply assigned her a number and sent her to be relocated on a planet that needed workers. Nari tried to tell them about her real family, but without any proof. They assumed she was making up stories. The industrial planet called Kepler 442b was nothing like Nari's beautiful homeworld. The sky was always orange because of the pollution from the factories. The air tasted like metal and oil and made her cough. Huge machines worked day and night digging minerals from the ground and building spaceships. The people who lived there were mostly miners and mechanics who worked hard and did not have time for small talk. Nari was taken to a group home run by an elderly woman named Sunya. The building was old and crowded with 17 other orphan children from different planets. Sunya was kind, but she was too busy taking care of so many children to give special attention to anyone. She made sure everyone had food and clean clothes, but there was not much time for hugs or bedtime stories. The other children in the group home were curious about Nari at first. She was the only one with blue skin and purple eyes, so she stood out. But when they asked her questions about her family, she would talk about parents and a brother who never visited. She would describe a home that did not exist in any records. The other children decided she was making up stories to feel better. About being abandoned, a boy named Woo Jin, who was 10 years old, tried to be her friend. He had been at the group home for 2 years after his parents died in a mining accident. He told Nari that all the children there had sad stories, but making up fake families would not help her feel better. He said she should try to make new friends. Instead of living in dreams about people who did not exist, Nari tried to explain that her family was real, but no one would believe her. She would draw pictures of Youngmi and Daeho and Jin-Woo, but the other children just thought she had a good imagination. When she talked about the research building and the memory machines, the adults assumed she had seen something like that in a movie. At night, Nari would lie in her small bed and look through the window at the stars. She could find the constellation where her home planet was located. She knew exactly which star it was, and she would whisper goodnight to her family even though they could not hear her. She remembered every detail of her old life, but she was the only one who remembered it. The worst part was trying to contact her family through the Galactic Communication Network. The group home had a public terminal that the children could use to send messages. Nari tried again and again to call her parents, but their home frequency was blocked to her calls. The system showed her messages as undeliverable because the recipients did not recognize her as a family member. She tried calling Jinwoo's school and the research building, but no one knew who she was. When she mentioned Youngmi and Daeho, the people would confirm that those scientists worked there, but they would say those people only had one child. The computer records showed Jinwoo as an only child, and there was no mention of any daughter named Nari. Sunya noticed that Nari seemed sadder than the other children. She would sit alone during meals and did not want to play games. The old woman tried to cheer her up by giving her extra dessert and letting her help with small chores. But Nari felt like she was drowning in loneliness. She existed, but she did not belong anywhere. The industrial planet was full of noise and smoke and busy people who did not have time to care about a lost alien child. Nari felt invisible even though everyone could see her. She had been erased from the memories of the people who loved her, and now she was just another orphan in a universe that had forgotten she ever had a family. Sometimes she would dream that Jinwoo came to rescue her, or that Youngmi and Daeho suddenly remembered their daughter. But every morning she would wake up in the crowded dormitory and remember that she was alone. The machine had stolen more than her place in her family. It had stolen her entire identity and left her with nothing but memories that no one else shared. For 3 months, Bo-Ram and Nari worked together in the small garage, studying everything they could find about memory deletion technology. The quantum computers that Bo-Ram repaired gave them access to scientific databases from across the galaxy. They learned about consciousness, transfer experiments, and quantum memory storage systems. The more they researched, the more convinced Bo-Ram became that Nari could be restored to her family. The breakthrough came when they discovered a technical report about memory deletion device malfunctions. The report described several cases where the quantum deletion process had failed and created backup copies of the deleted memories. These backup copies were stored in the device's buffer memory for 72 hours before being permanently destroyed. But if the device had been damaged during the malfunction, the backup data might still exist. Bo-Ram explained to Nari that her quantum signature was probably still stored in the memory deletion device back at the research building. The signature contained all the information about her relationships with her family and her place in their lives. If they could access this backup data and broadcast it back to her parents and brother, it might restore her existence in their memories, but there were serious problems with this plan. First, they needed to contact the research building and access the memory deletion device remotely. This would require a quantum transmitter powerful enough to send signals across interstellar space. The nearest transmitter was in the mining colony's communication hub, but it was heavily guarded and monitored by security systems. Second, they needed to extract the backup data from the damaged device without alerting the scientists. Bo-Ram knew that Dr. Hyun-Sik and his team were probably still studying the malfunction and trying to figure out what had gone wrong. If they detected someone accessing the device remotely, they would immediately shut down the connection and strengthen their security. Third, they needed to calibrate the memory restoration process perfectly. If they sent the wrong quantum signatures or used the wrong frequency, the restoration might fail or even cause more damage. Bo-Ram had experience with quantum systems, but he had never attempted anything as complex as restoring erased memories across interstellar distances. The communication hub was located in the center of the mining colony inside a tall building surrounded by security fences. The quantum transmitter was on the top floor in a room that required special clearance to enter. Guards patrolled the building 24 hours a day, and electronic sensors monitored every entrance and corridor. Bo-Ram spent weeks studying the building's layout and security systems. He learned the guard schedules and identified the weak points in their surveillance network. The building had maintenance tunnels that ran between the floors, and these tunnels were too small for adult humans to use. But they would be perfect for someone as small as Nari. Nari insisted on participating in the mission, despite Bo-Ram's concerns about her safety. She argued that she was the only one who could properly calibrate the memory restoration process, because she had lived through the original deletion. Her small size would also allow her to navigate the maintenance tunnels and avoid the security systems. Beoram was reluctant to involve Nari in something so dangerous, but he realized she was right. A quantum calibration required someone who understood exactly what had been deleted and how the memories were connected. Nari's alien physiology might also help her survive the quantum energy exposure that would be necessary to complete the restoration. They began planning the infiltration in detail. Beoram would create a diversion at the main entrance to draw the guards away from the communication hub. Nari would enter through the maintenance tunnels and make her way to the quantum transmitter room. Beoram would provide remote technical support through a portable communication device. The plan required precise timing and several pieces of specialized equipment. Beoram spent his savings to buy quantum interface modules and signal amplifiers. He modified a portable computer to handle the complex calculations needed for the memory restoration process. He also created false identification documents that would allow him to enter the building's outer perimeter. The most dangerous part of the plan was the actual memory restoration process. Beoram would need to establish a quantum link with a memory deletion device while Nari operated the transmitter. The quantum energy involved would be enormous, and any mistake could damage both the transmitter and the restoration data. They would have only one chance to get it right. Beoram explained to Nari that the restoration process might not work perfectly. Even if they successfully transmitted her quantum signature back to her family, there was no guarantee that their memories would be fully restored. The human brain was very complex and the memory deletion had been thorough. Some memories might be recovered while others remained lost forever. Nari told Beoram that she was willing to take the risk. Even if only some of her memories were restored, it would be better than remaining erased from her family forever. She missed her parents and brother so much that she was willing to try anything to see them again. The loneliness was worse than any physical danger they might face. They also discussed what would happen if they were caught. Breaking into the communication hub was a serious crime, and they would probably be arrested and sent to prison. Beoram would lose his repair shop, and Nari would be sent to a different orphanage far away. But both of them felt that the chance to reunite Nari with her family was worth the risk. The night before the mission, Beoram and Nari sat in the garage, going over the plan one final time. They had practiced every step dozens of times and memorized the layout of the communication hub. Beoram had tested all the equipment and confirmed that the quantum transmitter was functioning properly. Everything was ready. Nari looked at Beoram and thanked him for believing in her story and helping her find a way back to her family. She said that even if the plan failed, she would always remember that someone had cared enough to try. Beoram told her that helping her had given him a new purpose in life and reminded him that sometimes the most important things were worth fighting for. As they prepared to leave the garage, Beoram checked the portable quantum interface one more time. The device would allow them to access the memory deletion device and download Nari's quantum signature. If everything went according to plan, they would be transmitting that signature back to her family within hours. The little alien girl who had been erased from existence was about to attempt the most dangerous mission of her life. With the help of a human mechanic who had lost his own family, she would try to restore what had been stolen from her. The plan was risky and complicated, but it was their only chance to undo the terrible mistake that had separated her from the people she loved most. The night of the mission arrived with a violent storm that shook the buildings of the mining colony. The atmospheric processors were working overtime to clear pollution from the air, and they created artificial lightning that lit up the orange sky. Beoram and Nari used the storm as cover to approach the communication hub without being seen by the security cameras. They met at a maintenance shed behind the main building at exactly midnight. Beoram carried a bag of electronic equipment while Nari wore dark clothes that would help her blend into the shadows. The storm was so loud that they had to shout to hear each other, but the noise would also mask any sounds they made during the infiltration. Beoram reviewed the plan one final time. He would approach the main entrance and report a fake emergency about damaged equipment at his repair shop. This would draw the guards away from their normal patrol routes and give Nari time to enter the building through the maintenance tunnels. Once she reached the quantum transmitter room, she would signal him, and they would begin the memory restoration process. The maintenance tunnel entrance was hidden behind a large ventilation unit on the side of the building. Bioram used his tools to remove the metal grating and help Nari squeeze into the narrow tunnel. The space was barely wide enough for her small body, and she had to crawl on her hands and knees through the darkness. Inside the tunnel, Nari used a small flashlight to navigate through the maze of pipes and electrical conduits. The buildings' blueprints that Bioram had studied showed the tunnel system connecting all the floors, but the actual layout was more complicated than they had expected. Several times, Nari had to backtrack when she reached dead ends or blocked passages. Meanwhile, Bioram approached the main security checkpoint and told the guards that his quantum repair equipment was malfunctioning and creating dangerous energy surges. He said the problem was urgent and could damage other systems in the colony if not fixed immediately. The guards were suspicious, but they agreed to send a team to investigate the reported emergency. As the security team left to check Bioram's shop, Nari finally reached the quantum transmitter room on the top floor. The room was filled with massive computers and communication equipment that hummed with electrical power. The quantum transmitter itself was a silver cylinder surrounded by control panels and monitoring displays. Nari connected Bioram's portable quantum interface to the transmitter's main computer. The device immediately began analyzing the quantum frequencies and searching for a connection to the memory deletion device on her home planet. The process was more complex than they had anticipated, and several error messages appeared on the screen. Through her communication device, Nari heard Bioram's voice guiding her through the technical procedures. He was still at the security checkpoint pretending to coordinate the repair work at his shop, but he was actually helping her calibrate the quantum systems. The guards had not yet realized that the emergency was fake, but they would discover the truth soon. The quantum interface finally established a connection with the memory deletion device. Nari could see on the screen that the backup data was still stored in the device's buffer memory. Her quantum signature was there along with all the information about her relationships with her family. The data had been preserved because the device had never completed its shutdown sequence after the malfunction, but extracting the data required precise timing and careful handling. The quantum signature was fragmented across multiple storage locations and had to be reassembled in the correct order. Nari worked quickly but carefully, following Bioram's instructions as she downloaded pieces of her erased existence. Suddenly, alarms began blaring throughout the building. The security team had returned from Bioram's shop and discovered that there was no equipment malfunction. The guards realized they had been tricked and began searching the building for intruders. Heavy footsteps echoed through the corridors as armed security personnel rushed toward the upper floors. Nari's hands shook as she continued working on the quantum interface. The memory restoration process was only halfway complete, and she needed more time to finish the data extraction. Bioram's voice came through the communication device telling her to hurry. Because the guards were getting closer to the transmitter room, the quantum signature reassembly was the most critical part of the process. If the data was transmitted incorrectly, it could cause permanent damage to her family's memories or even erase them completely. Nari had to balance speed with accuracy. As she aligned the quantum frequencies and prepared for the final transmission, the guards reached the top floor and began checking every room. Nari could hear them shouting commands and opening doors as they searched for whoever had triggered the security system. She had maybe 2 minutes before they found the transmitter room and discovered her illegal access to the quantum systems. Bioram abandoned his position at the main checkpoint and fought his way through the building toward the transmitter room. He knew that Nari would need help completing the restoration process, and he was not going to let her face the guards alone. Several security officers tried to stop him, but he used his knowledge of the building's layout to avoid capture. The quantum interface display showed that the memory restoration data was finally ready for transmission. Nari initiated the broadcast sequence and watched as her quantum signature began streaming across space toward her home planet. The transmission would take several minutes to reach the research building, and she had to maintain the connection until it was complete. Oram burst into the transmitter room just as the guards were breaking down the door. He ran to Nari's side and helped her monitor the transmission progress, while security officers surrounded them with weapons drawn. The quantum energy in the room was so intense that some of the guards had to step back to avoid exposure. The transmission progress bar on the screen slowly filled as Nari's quantum signature traveled across the galaxy. 70% complete, then 80%, then 90%. The guards were shouting orders, but Bioram and Nari ignored them completely. They had come too far to give up now. When they were so close to success, finally the transmission reached 100% completion. Nari's quantum signature had been successfully broadcast to the memory deletion device at the research building. The restoration process was complete, and now they could only wait to see if the plan had worked. The guards immediately shut down the quantum transmitter and placed both Bioram and Nari under arrest. As they were led away in handcuffs, Nari looked back at the quantum transmitter one last time. Somewhere across the galaxy, her family might be starting to remember that they had a daughter and sister named Nari. The little alien girl who had been erased from existence had finally found a way to send herself back to the people who loved her. 3 days passed while Bioram and Nari sat in the mining colony's detention center waiting to learn their fate. The small cells were cold and uncomfortable, but neither of them regretted what they had done. They had completed their mission and transmitted Nari's quantum signature back to her family. Now they could only hope that the memory restoration process had worked. Ram tried to keep Nari's spirits up by telling her stories about his early days as a quantum engineer. He described the amazing projects he had worked on and the incredible discoveries that scientists were making about consciousness and memory. Nari listened carefully, but her thoughts were focused on her family and whether they might be starting to remember her. The detention center guards treated them fairly, but they made it clear that breaking into the communication hub was a serious crime. The colony administrators were still deciding what charges to file and what punishment would be appropriate. Bioram could face several years in prison, while Nari would probably be sent to a reform facility for troubled children. On the third morning, a priority communication signal arrived at the detention center. The message was marked as urgent and came from the Galactic Memory Institute where Nari's parents worked. The colony administrator who received the message was confused because the institute had never contacted them before about any prisoner. Dr. Hyansik appeared on the communication screen looking tired and worried. He explained that something extraordinary had happened at the research facility. The entire staff had suddenly recovered memories of a missing child named Nari who had somehow been forgotten completely. The memories had returned all at once 3 days ago, and everyone was trying to understand what had happened. The administrator listened with growing amazement as Dr. Hyansik described the memory restoration event. Youngmi and Daeho had been working in their laboratory when they suddenly remembered their daughter. At first they thought they were having shared hallucinations, but then other people began remembering Nari too. Jinwoo had called from school, crying because he had remembered his little sister. Dr. Hyansik said that the memory restoration had been triggered by a quantum transmission from the mining colony. The transmission had contained a perfect quantum signature that matched the backup data stored in their damaged memory deletion device. Someone had accessed their systems remotely and broadcast the restoration signal with incredible precision and technical skill. The administrator looked at Bioram and Nari with new understanding. These were not ordinary criminals who had broken into the communication hub for personal gain. They had somehow discovered a way to reverse the effects of the memory deletion accident and restore a lost child to her family. The complexity of what they had accomplished was almost impossible to believe. Within hours, a rescue ship arrived at the mining colony carrying Nari's family and a team of lawyers from the Galactic Memory Institute. The ship's captain had been authorized to take custody of both Nari and Bioram and transport them back to the research facility. The colony administrators were happy to avoid the complicated legal questions about the break-in. The reunion between Nari and her family took place in the detention center's visiting room. When young Mi and Daeho saw their daughter for the first time in almost a year, they began crying uncontrollably. They held her tightly as if she might disappear again and apologized over and over for forgetting her existence. Jinwoo was the most emotional of all. He remembered now how much he loved his little sister and how he had promised to always protect her. The guilt of having forgotten her was overwhelming, and he could not stop saying he was sorry. Nari hugged him and told him it was not his fault, because the machine had erased everyone's memories. Young Mi and Daeho also thanked Bilram for taking care of their daughter and helping her find a way back to them. They had reviewed the technical data from the quantum transmission, and they understood that only someone with advanced knowledge of quantum systems could have accomplished the memory restoration. Bilram had risked his freedom to help a child he barely knew. Dr. Hyansik formally apologized to both Nari and Bilram for the accident that had caused so much suffering. He explained that the memory deletion device had been permanently shut down and would never be used again. The research team was now focused on developing safer methods for helping people deal with traumatic memories. The legal team from the institute had already negotiated with the mining colony to drop all charges against Bilram and Nari. In exchange, the institute would provide the colony with new communication equipment and technical support. Dr. Hyansik also offered Bilram a position as a senior quantum engineer with the institute's research division. Bilram was amazed by the job offer. He had not worked as a professional engineer for 15 years, and he thought his career was over. But Dr. Hyansik said that Bilram's understanding of quantum consciousness was exactly what they needed to prevent future accidents. His experience with memory restoration technology would be invaluable for their research. The flight back to Nari's home planet was the happiest time of her life. She sat between her parents while Jinwoo held her hand and told her about everything that had happened while she was gone. Her family had suffered too during the months when they could not remember her. They had felt like something was missing from their lives, but they could not understand what it was. Young Mi and Daeho had experienced strange dreams about a daughter they did not have. Jinwoo had sometimes set the table for 4 people instead of 3 without knowing why. The house had felt too quiet and empty, but they could not explain their feelings. Now they understood that their hearts had been trying to remember what their minds had forgotten. When they arrived at the research facility, Nari was amazed to see that her bedroom had been perfectly preserved. Young Mi had kept it clean and organized, even though she could not remember why she was taking care of a room that seemed to belong to no one. The quantum restoration had also recovered the family photos that showed Nari and restored the digital records of her existence. Bilram was given a tour of the institute's laboratories and introduced to the research team. He was impressed by the advanced equipment and the important work they were doing. The position would allow him to use his skills to help other people while working with some of the most brilliant scientists in the galaxy. The story concluded with a celebration dinner at Nari's family home. Bilram was invited as an honored guest and treated like a member of the family. Nari taught him some of the traditional games of her people, while young Mi and Daeho discussed new safety protocols for quantum research. Jinwoo made Bilram promised to visit often and stay in touch with their family. As they sat around the dinner table, Nari looked at the faces of everyone she loved. Her parents were there smiling and laughing as they planned weekend activities. Jinwoo was there making jokes and telling stories about school. And Bilram was there too, looking happier than he had felt in 15 years. The little alien girl who had been erased from existence had not only found her way back to her family, but had also helped a lonely mechanic discover that he still had an important purpose in life. The machine had tried to delete her from the universe, but love and determination had found a way to hit the undo button and restore what had been lost.